Hello, I'm Ray. I'm here with Wayne Bailey from Youngberg Hill. We're going to discuss the red wines from his portfolio in this Wine Tap Tip segment. We're going to start off with his Youngberg Hill Cuvée Pinot Noir. Wayne, you want to tell us a little bit about the Cuvée, such as why it's called Cuvée and what is the varietal or varietals?
Well, first of all, I should clarify that Cuvée is not named after one of my daughters. However, we do have a vineyard dog on the property whose name is Cuvée, named after the wine. Cuvée is a French term meaning blend, but it's all Pinot Noir, so it's a blend of Pinot Noir fruit coming from 3 different vineyard blocks.
Okay.
The distinction is that those blocks are all with different soil types and all planted with a different clone. And clone is like a family tree. So in the Pinot Noir varietal, there are 1,000 clones, like many family trees in the human population. So.
Isn't it one of the most naturally mutating grape varietals that is out there? That's where we ended up with Pinot Gris, Pinot Bianco, Pinot Blanc, and because it's constantly mutating naturally on its own.
And part of the reason for that is because wine grapes are self-pollinating. So we don't need, although we love having bees around, and we want them to propagate other plants to have diversity of plant life on the hill, we don't need bees or anything else to cross-pollinate the vines. They do that all on their own.
So it's a wind pollen?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Now, what would be a couple key characteristics of this Pinot that you would want to kind of mention?
Well, the first thing would be this is an easy drinking wine. This is a 15. It's still very young, but it's also very accessible. So it's a little bit more fruit oriented. I would not go so far as to say it's fruit driven, but it's got a lot more fruit characteristic to it. It's an easy drinking wine. So you take a sip of it, you don't think about what do I want to serve with this or what do I want to eat with this. It's kind of like the Pinot Gris in a way. It's my coffee wine. It's like, okay, I just want to have a glass of wine and not have to think about it and really just enjoy the heck out of it.
Okay, so this is your, I want to drink a red wine, I don't need to have food, and I just want to knock it back. This is your go-to red wine.
Yeah.
Now, I notice you get a little bit of bright red fruit flavors in this, as far as like bright cherry. It's a bright cherry.
Well, and if you read the Wine Spectator or Wine Enthusiast or whatever, one of the driving characteristics of Pinot Noir typically is all about red fruit, and most specifically cherry. What you'll find from us typically is more dark cherry, and then when you get into our other wines, you get it more into the blue fruits and even the black fruits. But in this case, this is more red fruit driven. You get cherry, a little cola, a little rhubarb, a little cranberry, all coming out in that. But you still get good balance with the earthy and savory characteristics coming through.
Wow. Now we're going to the So now we're on the serious ones. Natasha. Now, you've mentioned a couple things about Natasha. I have not met Natasha, but she's your oldest daughter?
Yes. Yeah.
But out of your 3 children, she is the one that impresses me the most already. Well, as a complete sci-fi nerd, when I mentioned Wilson Tucker, and you said she wants to be a science fiction writer, right?
Science fiction, mystery, drama.
Yeah, I mean, come on. I mean, the fact that Wayne knew who Wilson Tucker is and was familiar with these books, the Lincoln Hunters and China Dow. I mean, this is a guy that was an influence on Ray Bradbury. This is one of the original science fiction writers. So for an 18-year-old to know who a 1930s science fiction writer is, as a nerd, I'm impressed. So Natasha, fingers up, and for all you sci-fi nerds out there, this should be your official wine when you go to science fiction conventions such as Comic-Con. And by the way, I know that once George Takei told me he likes his Napa Valley Pinot Noirs. Well, George, I'm telling you, you should start drinking this instead. Move north to the Willamette Valley just because of Natasha, okay?
Absolutely.
All right, now, so you've named this block after your oldest daughter. What are some of the characteristics after my little sci-fi nerd rant?
Well, the Natasha, first of all, these are 30-year-old vines, and they're planted on owned root, Pommard, and Wadensville clones. So that's significant in the fact that the structure, the depth, the intensity, the complexity, the amount of tannins is just, this is just a bigger, more complex. It's not overly fruit forward. It's not big fruit bomb or anything like that. It's very balanced and very elegant, but there's just a lot more going on. So when I smell this, the first thing I think about is, oh, what am I going to eat with this? You know. Having said that, the other thing is it sits at about 600 feet and is on marine sedimentary soil, and as a result tends to accentuate more of the Pommard clone. And the Pommard clone typically is going to have more of your spicy characteristics, be a little bit brighter fruit components. So you get a lot of blue fruits here. You get blueberry, a little raspberry coming through, but you get a lot of spice. So Natasha is kind of characteristic of white pepper. And in fact, Wine Spectator a few years ago called it their Zen Pinot. It was that vintage was so spicy. So those are the two components that really drive what the Natasha typically is year over year.
So this is a little 437 case production wine. You get this.
That's on a good year.
That's on a good year. Wow. So, wow, you know, talk about small and eclectic, but you get that smoke. What kind of oak? But I mean, you pick up the oak, but it doesn't overwhelm it.
No. In fact, it's interesting. Again, coming from my influence in Burgundy, I came in about less new oak than more, because I didn't want the wines being overly influenced by the oak. The fruit coming off of the Natasha and the Jordan as well, these older vines, they can take and handle a more new wood. So in terms of my winemaking, I've increased over the years the amount of new oak barrels that I use, because these wines coming out of off of our hill in the McMinnville AVA, they spit up and chew out barrels all day long.
Now, let me ask you this. Does the percentage of new oak versus used oak that you use, is that vary from vintage to vintage?
Yes.
So you don't use a formula. You base it on the vintage and the type of acidity and ripeness of that vintage.
Yes. Let the fruit tell me what it wants, what it needs.
So it's like let the vintage. So it's you're not a formula winemaker. You're a vintage by vintage winemaker.
Yeah, and in fact, not just vintage by vintage, but by block by block by block.
By block. So yeah. The oak regimen with this block versus this block versus these completely are different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's one of the nice and fun, exciting things about a small producer. And you were telling me earlier that the average production for Willamette in a winery is what, 5,000 cases?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Over 75% of us are small, family-owned, family-operated. it's an important distinction is that they're not just family owned, but they're family operated, and that's different. You can, and what I mean by that is you can have a family owned winery that made $1 million in another business, and then infused it into this business as a hobby or as a,
a status thing or monuments
or whatever, as opposed to some 75% of us included, that this is our living, that this is my 401k, this is my legacy to my daughters. So it's a working farm, and there's nothing is coming in except what's going out in terms of our wine production.
Even Cuvée has to earn his living.
That's exactly right. He keeps the deer out of the vineyard.
Keeps the deer out of the vineyards. I'm Ray, and I want to thank Wayne Bailey for joining us. And here's to living the wild wine life.
Thanks. Cheers.
Cheers.